An introduction on Suresh Kumar. He goes by many names. As a protagonist that he is, he changes his last name to whichever project that he does. He goes by Suresh Samuha, Suresh Loopholes, Suresh, I guess Sajapur now, and
Karis.
yeah, and
And people think Suresh is my surname now.
Vanilla surname, no?
No, I mean mine. People, because I keep changing. Suresh has become a constant thing, so they think it's a surname.
So I think Suresh has done his formal education in sculpture at the Chitrakala Parishad, which is a government-aided college in on Kumara Krupa Road, and he has jumped from practice to practice, from theater to art direction to perform, leading some actually a lot of performance collectives and initiatives in Bangalore, and he's been uh, also in relevance to the future of transportation. I will ask Rob to speak on his role in a while. But continuing his introduction, Suresh plays his role between an artist and a facilitator and an activist, and has been a veteran amongst the Bangalore artists and knows the Bangalore context from its like contemporary birth in a way. And some of the many projects that he initiated are Samuha, Loopholes, Future of Transportation itself, Sajapur Curries. He led the activism for the Venkatappa Art Gallery protests. To give a bit of context on that, the gallery was about to be adopted by a private agency, and Suresh and a lot of senior Bangalore artists and Karnataka artists got together to lead a collective voice against this move, where they were actually for the gallery to stay within the government domain, and they wanted the government to fund more programs. So this particular program went on for a year, and yeah, he's done a lot of residencies abroad as a performance artist, as a curator, and I will request Rob to speak about his part for future of transportation.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, well, it's really great to have Suresh as one of the founders of the Future Transportation Project. Suresh joined us when we first cut off the streets around the new campus in Yelahanka and did a performance as part of the Streets Belong to the People. And then he then joined us the following year as a very major mover in setting up a quasi-government agency. I'm not going to say it was fake because I think it was quite real. A quasi-government agency called the Department of the Future of Transport, and the Shrishti students who took part in that basically became government employees for a week and went to the bus stations and collected the stories from commuters. Then when we went to the Kochi Biennale to do the collateral event, the Department of the Future of Transport became a real office in the context of the building that we called Future Transportation. And they basically came to work every day with in office gear and wearing name tags, and fulfilled the function of a government department within that context. But I would also like to add to the history of Suresh's work. I really love the performance he did where he dismantled his father's bicycle and then put it back together again. I think in that gallery you talked about Venkatappa, yeah. And so to me, that taking apart the bicycle and putting it back together again is a symbol of what I think the future transportation concept it really stands for. So I'm really happy to introduce all of you to Suresh today. Thank you, Suresh, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, Rob. Thank Yash and Arzu. And hello to all the Srishti friends and students. Hi. Um, so I'm audible? Well?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Because there's little nice breeze. I want to sit outside. So it's a nice breeze here. And yeah. So how do we go
Yes,
now?
and also, Suresh, whenever you want me to share the slideshow or the video, I can do that. So just let me
Yeah.
know.
Thank you. Thank you. So now it's just a thing because mostly as Yash introduced, that I keep hopping on from project to project and in my own, not only as a concept, but I also like sometimes even my attitude, my lifestyles, my this thing change. Now I'm in a very farm mode, doing this new farm setup from last 2 months. And we are also growing and trying to sell the produce and also sustain this project called Sarja Prakaris. So I'm in a crazy setup. It's a small farmhouse, very basic. And my cousin has offered me to use the space and do whatever I want to do. So hopefully that this also becomes like another like Samoa for what I did Samoa for artists and art students. This could be something for gardeners and also public and people and also for students to learn and children to play around and things like that. So now it's just that Yash suddenly pulled me into this loopholes because it's already like I think 7-8 years. I think Yash.
2013.
Yeah, so it's already like almost it'll be about like 8 years now. So it's been little which I'm kind of moved on from what I've been doing every year or two. So yeah, but now bringing that 080 under this loophole curation or facilitation project now into this future of transport is very interesting because I was dealing with at that time mostly about the space, for example, because Samoa was mostly about having a space, working with the underused space. And then we moved on to virtual online space, like something to do with perfumes, where a lot of learning would happen from the material available online and things like that. So I've uploaded a lot of I mean, all those events which was happening in Bangalore in public spaces and things like that, which is like knowledge in common, not inside the classrooms, but which was happening outside, the learning which was happening outside in public in during the talks and discussions. So I used to voluntarily record them, video record them, and post it online. So there are all these videos of most of the artist talks that happened in Bangalore at the time for that 2-3 years is still online on padma.pad.me. So similarly, Post Samoa was perfumes, mostly uh, online. Then we moved on to proposition like to do with the space which is in transit, basically. I mean, transit means like transition. Like for example, any projects, government or any like metro projects or anything like large scale infrastructure projects, or even a basic construction like a city or a campus or something, they all take minimum 5 years. So my concept was to see that what happens in that 5 years, because we know that it is always like covered with tin sheets or polythene, and it's not to be seen place, because they all violate a lot of things. There's they don't follow the labor laws, whatever, all those things. Something it's always hidden somewhere, and we don't know whether who is working inside, machines or man, and all those things. And this COVID situation with the migrant issues, and because I was closely associated with Voice of Sarjapura, I'm also part of this Voice of Sarjapura group here. We work to kind of help this migrant laborers who are stuck and help them to go to their natives. And also knowing that all that what was behind the tin sheets and all those things was really painful. So similarly, we at that time during the loopholes, we thought of proposing this sites of construction as an space for activity, art, and like some kind of an intervention. And so these artists who were part of this group 08030, well, our young artists, Yash is one of the youngest at the time. And so all these artists were under 30 years, because Samoa, when I did, it was like it could be a mixed group of artists, senior artists, young artists, and things like that. But here, consciously, I wanted to work with even with young students or young artists who are just graduated, and mostly these artists are kind of new to the city. They are coming from a smaller districts. They moved to Bangalore to study art and things. So I wanted to see that what is their take on a city like Bangalore, you know. So so that way, most of these young artists lived on almost like an outskirt, like or out of the state, because the rents are cheaper, or they had relatives somewhere. So they all lived in a kind of a periphery around the central thing. So they proposed. It was them was selecting the sites and proposing the sites, and the sites were mostly like, for example, you will see in the slides. I think Arzu, we can go with the slides now. So most of the sites were literally construction sites of a metro project, or it could be like a street which is like erased on both the sides, left and right, to make a underpass. You know, so everything looked very like some kind of a, like as if the city is under some kind of a transition, or it could be like even look like some of those photos you see from Europe of the war times, you know, like half broken, half fallen, and things like that. So, so this was like some kind of a very negative. The, you know, like if you see as a building which is like half done, and not even half done, it's like half chopped, for example. So these were the sites which all these young artists were. Uh, were, were selecting for their interventions. And some was also like a sand depot where a lot of trucks would bring the sand to the city to sell. So this they were halted on the outer ring road, you know, close to that nice road, and where people would go and buy the sand at the time. So the sand trucks with all its employees and workers and drivers would hang around there. They even slept in the trucks, you know. So this was like kind of a space. I'll come to the details of those such works, but right now I'm telling that what was this sites basically about. And one other site was like where Navin and other friends proposed was this a foot over bridge near High Grounds Police Station, you know, on Airport Road, Chalukya Circle. So this foot over bridge was
Suresh, let
built
me
for,
know when you want me to move forward.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So this foot over bridge, for example, was like built very ambitiously for people to cross and things like that, but it has always been underused. So what we observed is, like when we worked for there for 2 days and 3 days, we observed that only the migrant workers around who are new to the city, or that kind of they have fear of for the traffic. They are the ones only who are using that, but the regulars who are around there, they are walking with their dogs, and you know, like people, they would never take this foot over bridge. They always cross the street, you know. So this was like an underused space. So these are the such became uh, one of the sites. And then we also choose one of the lake beds, like that's the lake bed I did my schooling. So it was a playground for the schools around. So the lake bed was kind of a site for us in a school, as a because it was summer and children played there so much. So we did some kind of an intervention. That was even a Yash idea, that to do something with ice and things like that. For example, we in winters, we you see people gather around fire, you know, in a street or in a corner or somewhere, or in the house and things like that. So similarly, we proposed that we will bring blocks of ice, colored blocks, and put them in the field, you know, in middle of the summer. So what would be the response? How would the children and other people would intervene? So would intervene, and what would be the like kind of artistic ideas to around this idea of ice in a summer of in a field in a summer. So a lot of such things happen. And one more work was on the flyover, you know, because flyovers don't have a pedestrian pathways, you know, that is, pedestrians are not allowed. So what it means for us to have a fantasy to walk on the flyover, you know, for example. And what if that an artist proposes to play a hopscotch on a foot over bridge. And then another artist, Arpita, she did something at the entrance of the garments factory, you know. So a lot of work, such things happen. So I think now we can go into the slides, and I will talk with little examples of it. Yeah, so this is the Kadrenalli underpass, which you see that left side is a separate ward and right side is a separate ward, the road which divides the wards. And this divider erased a lot of houses, and it was like, it was almost like not a I mean, economically, that families are not really sound. So this buildings, this broken chopped off chopped buildings were kept for like this for a longer time. You know, so only recently I think they've been renovating it and refurbishing it and building the walls against it to cover. So they are almost, because they don't have space now, they almost made this walls towards the street, you know, with some tiny windows to it. So there was a lot of wall spaces. So a lot of artists decided to paint on those walls. And I think everyone knows Badal Ranjan Swami, Badal, who does all this interventions in the city with the civic issues. So his first mural happened here in town. Yeah, next. So this is how it was. That you can see that. So on the corner of that image, you can see that somebody managed, the signboard artist and an artist friend, who managed to climb and clinch onto that hanging concrete block, and they painted something called strong, you know, as if like a walls, because you can, if you really recollect, most of these buildings on the highways and the roadways, they have this painted advertisements, you know, like old, it's not the flex, it's they paint on the walls, like basic colors and minimum design and things like cement ads or banyan ads or underwear ads and things like that. So this, so it almost looked like that, and it was very interesting to see that how they managed to paint that tip which was hanging, you know, with a few rods. Next. So this was a group. Our meeting happened on the on the wall of that footover bridge. Yeah. So like they did some installations and hung on the. So this is in context with the road and the idea of erasing it, idea of chopping somebody's house, where you could see that like a space like bathroom is exposed to the street now. You know, the bathroom is to be the most like private space which is covered with walls and all, but then since it's erased, you can see somebody's bathroom is exposed, like as if like a stage. Yeah, next. Yeah, this is how it is. You can see artists like struggling with ladders because there is no access way to reach to the terrace, so they had to really use some ladders and ropes and to climb and paint there. Next. This is like, so you can see that all this white bottles on the top of the roof is Yash installation, and bottom is a collective work where we framed this wall with empty canvas like looking, with nice golden frames and all, like a museum. And so those empty white spaces were offered for young artists to paint them. So we just painted that wall with white, and we put a plaster of Paris frames with golden paint. So it looked like really rich, like antique canvases. So this after this was done, this artist had an opportunity to paint the landscape. Sorry, the cityscape, what they see around this Kadrenalli in that walls. I think we don't have that image. So most of the paintings, what was hung there inside was the roadscape, you know, or the buildings, images of all the architecture around and things like that. Next. And there was, you can see in the bottom of that left thing, there is a blacksmith who is to sit there. So we requested one artist who was not part of the group, but they do a lot of wall paintings, that if we can paint something to make that space little nicer for that blacksmith who sits. So he came up with this idea of that concept of Vishwakarma, and there's so many hands with tools and all. So he painted something like, so that place also became like a signpost for this blacksmith for his profession and things like that. Yeah, next. So this was Badal's work. This was a place where a lot of people used to throw garbage. So he painted this thing, this face, like as if like all these heads or faces are looking at the garbage, and they're making their expressions. Next. This is Ranjana's work, which actually, like, it's an interesting conversation we had when she was painting this, because this building belongs to a Muslim family, and they don't believe in using image, so they were a little keen on not to not somebody paints a image human figure on their wall. So, and all these paintings we did was like temporary. We would erase it back uh, after the intervention is over, after this thing, some kind of open day is over. We would paint it back blank for them. So there was nothing permanent as such. So here she made this wall, and she tied that rope like a cobweb, and then she's this like a spider being stuck. She put this chair which is stuck like to the spider web, and with this human figures like looking what do you call as the bowling, I don't know what do you call, yeah,
Bowling pins.
yeah, bowling pins. And this is Varsha's work. This all this stones which was around, she painted them, and as they look like very candy-like or very light, and it brought some kind of an ambience to the space. And actually, this is a place where a lot of men used to pee there, and after that, maybe they might have stopped. So, so 080 means it's a Bangalore's phone code for the landline, which is now hardly there with people. So we choose that as a like a code, like a project, like a name. And Loopholes is the my larger ongoing curation, whatever it is. Under the loophole, I did that 080. So similarly, I'm ambitious, like to do a lot of projects under this larger group, a larger setup. Like right now, like I'm working on the Sarjapra curries and my terrace gardens, and this now on a bee Osaldi farm. So all this comes under a project called DOUG. Like I made this, like as Rob says, it's not fake, but it's like kind of a quasi, like it exists, but it's not authentic like a government stuff. So I call it this urban gardening project as Department of Organic Urban Gardening. So DOUG. So under the DOUG, now I started off with my terrace garden, and then I started working with Sarjapra curries. Right now, the Sarjapra curries has been like kind of gone to a little farm scale, where we are also connecting the consumers also. So the knowledge of the traditional knowledge is not only for conservation, but also to be shared. So we have now at least like 20 to 25 families who regularly book our greens and this local vegetables. We don't grow a hybrid, and not only that we are growing organic, but we also don't want to grow any hybrid stuff. We would stick to local and seasonal, and try as natural as possible to eat healthy. Yeah. Thanks. So these we did such interventions once in 15-20 days, and in the meantime, once we started this, we also got funded by IFA as we were in the process. And so they called their project as 560, so which is again like not a phone code but a pin code of Bangalore. So maybe it's like everyone were thinking in the same lines at the same time. So we were in the middle of the project, and then we got the funds. We got a grant, so that we were able to sustain this project for a few more months. And so similarly, all this flyers you see is like from the various interventions like that. This was in a art gallery, placing art. On the first event was at the art gallery, and then the second one is this. These images are from the footover bridge. Next. So this is the footover bridge, which is at the cross junction, the high ground station. Next. Yeah, this is how you see below the bridge. Busy airport road. So this one artist who studied artistry at Baroda and from university, so he was doing this kind of a performance, uh, like he's as if like he's seeing this photo bridge as like as if he's climbing some religious temple or pilgrim, like a temple on the hilltop or something like that. So he was counting steps and he was like praying the steps as he climbs every step. Next. 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 So literally there it was very dark on the footover bridge. So that white spot you see is what we had as a torch. So we were putting the torchlight on the artist, whoever is performing or whoever is doing the work. So there was really no audience per se. It was most of this work happened amongst us, because that was the whole exercise about doing a project like that with 30-40 people. So with 30 members at least, we ourselves 30 become a members for the audience for this projects. So there is also, you can see that there is a print which is painted on the ground with a lot of signage, uh, like a zebra crossing with a lot of other images on it. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So this is another intervention by another artist, young artist, Varsha. So it's supposed to be like you pick a coin and if you were walking on this bridge that you would earn 1 rupee or something like that. Like if you use a bridge, you will be earning 1 rupee coin. So you can see some of the people who were crossing. As I said, it was only very few people who used to use. And now you see this. This is Ranjana's intervention. It's very interesting for me because she is herself a known Bharatanatyam dancer and a sculptor. But it's interesting for me that she had this fantasy of playing hopscotch on that footover bridge. You know, it's like in the middle of city and it's a fancy area, and then you have this footover bridge, and she wants to play hopscotch on it. Because we all have memories of playing on streets, but these days when you move to the cities like Bangalore and all, the concept of playing on a street is not there. You know, like our many cricket superstars always had memories of playing cricket on the streets, you know, and then they become superstars, or they represent country and you know things like that. So I see that there is a lot of this kind of a nostalgic past coming from small towns and small villages that we relate so much to the streets, you know. And then typical, it was raining and then we had a group photo. And this was an intervention in a city market, which everyone knows now because it's such a beautiful place. But due to this Corona situation, COVID situation, I think this market, the concept of market and all those things has really, you know, it's very unfortunate to say that this charm of market and the chaos and all is lost in a way for now. You know, because these markets have become a hotspot for COVID spread and things like that. Uh, of course, temples and other things got away, but this markets where the vendors and all those people hang around and sell or earn something is something that's become such a negative space in this last 4 months or something like that. So I feel very bad, hurt when I see these images now playing from the city market. So there's at the city market, there's Ranjana, another same artist who did this hopscotch. She proposed that she would walk all through that flyover. This was the first flyover in Bangalore, in the city, and it was built to connect Mysore Road and Town Hall. And so it's the longest one also. So she wanted to walk on a sunny day on the flyover in the middle of the median with the wings tied to her like from the hurt bird or something like that. Next. So when we did this intervention, there were this guys who were painting the median also at the same time. So this is a historic care market building, And Ranjana, she got her props with a shape of a eagle in wings done, and she also dressed very close to an eagle. And even if public wanted to watch her work, they had no opportunity to stand or stop or halt their vehicles on the flyover to see her work. So it has to be like that second of like glance, you know, to pass and see. So that was also like very interesting to see that when an artist is performing or something, or art is weaved, is always viewed in this luxury of time and space and everything. But here you are zipping through, you know, and at the same time there's no crowd gathered there, there's no police around, because we also didn't take permission to it. And so we would always get away with this like guerrilla like interventions, you know, because if you ask for permissions you're not allowed, you know, all those things. So we would only do it with artists and few people who would document it with little risk involved. So otherwise we always never entertained audience as such. We never invited people to come over and things like that, because I personally feel as a facilitator, if not as a curator, but I want to fulfill or make this ideas possible for the artist, you know, when she or he proposes that I want to walk on the flyover with wings. Yes, so our work is only to facilitate their work, make it happen, because on their own it's very difficult to do such works. So as a group we did a lot of work, which many times is very difficult even if I want to propose and do it myself, you know. So that way the team and that collective spirit of that group was really very daring in a sense, and also very collaborative. They all help to make our wings, they all help to document these images. So it's a very collective resources. Yeah, you can see the dead circle. So it's a market where on the right side of this football bridge there is a mutton, and where a lot of sheep is cut and they sell in the market. So you see a lot of eagles and kites around. So she was relating that one of the dead kite in the middle of the median for her intervention. So she literally can see that. It's a great picture that where you can see that dead bird, and then she with the say similar looking wings. Next. So there's a iconic footwear. And then there's the similar same market, which is like very interesting space, the basement. And it's a well-designed market, but the basement is used mostly for car parking and vehicle parking. And also a lot of cattle under the basement, because they throw a lot of garbage there, all the city market waste, vegetable waste and all. So you see a lot of cattle being busy, the stray cattle being busy eating all the thing, you know. So there's an interesting, like you see a dungeon-like space with vehicles and leaking floors. And then also you see this cattle there. And then this guy, his name, Yash, what's his name? I forgot. The Mangalore guy.
Shailesh.
Shashidhar. Shailesh bought this very fancy car and he wanted to play in that basement parking area with his remote control. You know? So he was driving this car in between the parked vehicle spaces, you know. Yeah. So then similarly, there was another works which happened in the market was, we don't have images. I think it's because we did a lot of work. So it was, I know I couldn't ask much more from Yash to compile all the images because we did a lot of work. And so in market, we did some like, Prasad did this huge paper bags, and people, his friends and all, got into those paper bags and they were walking around the city market to bring some kind of awareness about plastic usage and things like that. And also there was another artist, Mohammed. He interestingly bought this amplifying speaker, and he was repeating all the sounds of this vendors calling out, you know, apple, apple, daskalo, daskalo, biskalo, diskalo, laskalo. You know, that he was remade. He was kind of emphasizing the same voices, and he was giving mic to them. So it was really like an orchestra at the time. So it's all very unannounced. You know, we didn't gather crowd because we didn't want to intervene like that thing. And it's, and also we do, when we are doing such work, we should also don't want to feel like as if like some cinema shooting is happening or some tele serial shooting is happening or something like that, because that that kills off all that experience an artist wants to have it, so we are really not really like a performance artist. We are more like an artist with ideas and to intervene in the existing situation. So we really don't want to disturb certain things. Of course, our interventions will make some certain this thing, some responses, sometimes criticism, some disturbance, sometimes police and all those things will happen. But we try to do as minimal, as subtle as possible. At least when I'm curating, I really want to not to really make it like as if it's like very predictable and things like that. So here is Arpita, as I said, that she's standing in front of, because she tried best to perform inside a factory. But most of the garments factories, we know their conditions and things, they will not let any people come there and see their working conditions and things like that. So she was not allowed, but she decided to do something in public in front of that garments factory. So that exactly at 5 o'clock or something like that, all women comes out of this huge factory in a small gate. So as people are coming, you can see all of a sudden in half an hour, there's all of vendors who were nowhere there half an hour before. They would come and sell their vegetables, clothes, saris, everything on the street. So and it's like almost like a stage, then everything folds up, and then the day is done. So when just before half an hour, all these vendors come and start selling. Then the women come, buy and go home, and then after half an hour the street is empty. So it's like a spectacle for 30 minutes. So Arpita decided to make this queen-like costume, but stitched from the waste from all the surplus garments factories. So she walked along with the workers. They're leaving the factory, because we all know this iconic workers leaving the factory video from the very first video shot historically. Yeah. So that's the factory. And she continued her walk to a mall where we were stopped. And we asked why this security is stopping us, because then they said that because of the kind of a dress she's wearing. So then we had this argument about what kind of a dress we have to wear to enter. Why can't she walk like this into a mall? So so they had no answers, but they stopped us, saying that this girl can't walk inside a mall. So then this performance extended even to Commercial Street on one of those event days. And you see same Shailesh, another intervention in Commercial Street. This is something this is the only intervention I think we did like in the middle of the city. Otherwise, most of the works are on the outskirts, and a lot of people don't even know these localities. And we were unable to invite any artists to come and see these works. So because our idea was to do such work as per artists' propositions, not to bother about the audience coming in and seeing it, but we would, in the end, we would put up this exhibition of images and documentation in a space. And fortunately, we had an opportunity to do at Maximum Bhavan. Very big show it was, and we could exhibit like at least 200 plus images and some 10-15 videos with other left kind of a residue like props and all those things, which was used in performances we created another beautiful, interesting intervention in Maximum Bhavan. And of course, we all know on internet, on social media, and all these images, actually what you're seeing now is actually what most of them are being uploaded on the day-to-day basis of when these works happen. So we were almost live, on Facebook with images. And so this Facebook remains as an archive, where even Yash now yesterday sat and dug all the images from my account. And he said yesterday that, we have done, there's so much that I've posted. I mean, it's embarrassing to say that I'm posting so much on Facebook, for example. We don't feel nice about it, that somebody posts so much on Facebook. But for me at the time is very important, because I was posting this not as a project per se, but it is an archive for an artist who is working, and a young artist whom people have to remember their work. So such posting and such archiving was very important, that this little works, what they did at the time, becomes very important profile for them also. Because all these artists, like for example, Shailesh is in Bangalore. He hardly comes to the city like Bangalore. But whenever we did these events on the weekends and holidays, he would come down by bus, and we used to also support him for his travel from Bangalore to Bangalore, and you would do such works and we would go back. So that was the whole idea, because there were students and some of them were working, and we would only gather to do such interventions on weekends and only on holidays, because all these young artists who come to the cities also they have to earn their livelihood. They do odd jobs, so we didn't want to disturb their this thing. So this proposition was literally to make this possible, even if you're unemployed or whatever you are working for, and things like if you're like full-time job but still want to do uh, ideas, want to kind of do art, for example, and not to give up art. Yeah. So he was measuring literally the commercial street. So with his measuring cloth tape tied to his body, he was literally measuring the commercial street area by foot. So he's walking slowly, foot after feet, and he's measuring this count. Yeah, next. So this is now again, we move back to another site, which is the Metro Nayandalli Junction, and which is these junctions are notoriously famous, for many reasons, because these junctions become like junctions because of not only for the transport reasons, but earlier it was mostly about the rivers, so-called rivers, which has now turned into sewages, drainages, or what you call as rainwater storms. So most of these hotspots are almost under, they fall across these water drains. So interestingly, you see here there's a water running Rishbhavati, and there's a metro running, there's a Mysore highway, and also the connecting point for Nice Road. So there's so much of thing happening there. So you can see that that this water, which is like like dirty, foaming and all, and artists like Raghu is a very interesting artist, and we did such a beautiful poetic intervention in this water, dirty water. So he was like performing for some time as like as if he is canoeing on this lake, on this river or something like that. Next image, please. Oh, I think we missed that Raghu's image somewhere. Okay. I don't see that image. Okay.
We have it
Anyways,
later.
Later. Okay. So it's Raghu who sat on the edge of that water body, and he had this canoeing thing and like paddle, and he also had a white costume with a lot of paper boards stuck to his entire body. He looked like really like a saint, like in a very Sufi
That
kind of a look.
that
And
comes ahead. We'll see pictures of it.
yeah. So then yeah, we'll go. And this is another. This is the spot I talked about. That the sand trucks which comes from Mandya, Malvali, or other most of the river beds. The sand is coming from Kaveri river belt. So the fantasy was, in a way, we discussed about the spot. An artist proposed the spot, but he couldn't come. He lives in Ballari, Hospete, Hampi. He couldn't come, but it was a very interesting spot. Which I also connect so much to myself. So we decided to do it. So sometimes when artists were proposing these ideas, they themselves could never make it. So, but other artists who had who were around and who had time to make it could make it. So this was really like a collective thing. It's not like yours, mine, and all those things. So the proposition was open and anybody could do it. So here you can see that's a beautiful image where you have a petrol station and you have a truck standing with the sand. And just imagine that you crop off that entire image and take that only umbrella and the chair, the beach umbrella and the chair image. So literally it looks like as if you are at a beach or you are on a riverside, for example. Because I know from my childhood, the only memory most of the urban kids will have of a sand is only from a construction site. And you will see like a neighbor or a security guard or somebody is always chasing these children from this sand at the construction site because it gets lost or washed and things like that. So I have a lot of memories like playing in the sand at a construction site because that's the only place you could get a sand, So that remained me for a long time also. So I was seeing this sand as a some kind of as a space for fantasies in a city like Bangalore, where we don't have river nor we have a beach. because as a civilization, most of these big cities are either on a lake, riverbeds or at the seaside, so but it's interesting that the Bangalore is in a such a altitude of 800 meters high altitude, and these trucks are bringing the sand to the top of the city, to a city like Bangalore, which is on the top, and all the sand is coming from the river or sea, and they are put back again on the top of the hill, like city like Bangalore, and then again it drains back, when it washes away and all those things. It is interesting to as a concept that these trucks, these sand trucks are the most heaviest trucks. You need a special skill to drive these trucks, and they come with all this regional paintings on it, and it's very colorful trucks, and the guys are interesting. They almost live in these trucks, and there's a lot of some kind of restaurants around, and a lot of prostitution around happening around this hotspots like this, so it was very happening place in a way. Next. So this is one of the spot. Yeah, you can see this Raghu there sitting in a white like a bird. Yeah, this is a good image. It's very interesting for me that this image, especially, I don't know who clicked it. It could be me or it could be somebody else with our cameras, because I was giving cameras and it was many people who were taking pictures. So this whole thing was whose work it is anyway, things like that. It's Raghu's work, but who shot the picture? Because I used the same image for my kind of an exhibition later in Germany, in Hamburg. So I blowed up this huge image onto a wall, and then me and my daughter were intervening and making a paper boats of this sheet which was stuck on the wall, this entire big image on the wall. We were cutting these papers and we were making paper boats and in doing and intervening. So that was after this performance happened, and then there was 4 years or something later. So that was this. It's very interesting how this image you're collectively building, and it belongs to everyone. And at the same time, there's nothing that somebody can claim. So anybody can really do what they want to do with the idea itself, with the beauty of that work. So it's not about him, us, and things like that. Performance information could be him, but the image, anonymous. Like somebody said, it's on Facebook now. I don't know who's going to use it and who's going to, so so we were really keen on ideas and experiential level rather than worry about all those things. Yeah, but it's very interesting because there's such an image. When I zoomed in and I enlarged it, I could see the details, like a medicinal packet, what is that medicine, and what is the plastic, which company package, which soap. I could see that all that, which I never thought that when we made these pictures of these places, when I blowed up in a gallery like space for my performance, I could see all the details of that garbage itself. So it was very interesting that way. Yeah. Next.
Suresh, could you just tell me the name of that artist again, please? The name of the artist, this one.
Raghu Vader.
Thank you. Maybe somebody could put that into the chat. I just would like to know. Thank you very much, Suresh.
So this is where all the trucks bring the sand and they store it as a depot. So every owner of the trucks will have this lot, and then they sell it. So we had permission, not permission. We really, initially they thought that we are the TV crew, or we are shooting and all those things, that because it was happening like an illegal thing, because you need a license to sell sand and all those things. So they were also not so want to entertain us, but as we grew, we were spending a lot of time with them, 1 week or something like that. Then they understood why we are doing all those things, and so they allowed us to perform and things like that in the end of the week. So whenever we went there, we didn't really go there and flash. We did many flash kind of a work, but we literally spoke to them. We tried to tell that what we are working, we are not from TV, and we are not doing anything else, things like that. But we really want to leave those fantasies there in the sand. Next. So this he dressed like a tribe and is dragging a sandbag on a flyover bridge. I think he dragged until the bag tears off. So he put the sand in a bag and he was walking on the bridge, and he let it tear off and then spill make a mark on the street. So this is another interesting where I said it's a junction of this nice road. Nice road is like a Nandi infrastructure corridor road, which is one of the India's first private road in a public space, So this artist Sridhar was very interesting artist. Now he's in Manipal. So he dressed himself as a scarecrow with a pot on his head and everything, and he tied himself to this earth mover. And so this earth mover was coming from this nice road to the main traffic road. It was one of the scariest performance that something would happen in public, He is referring this work to the farmlands which are lost to this ambitious road projects. So you can see bottom that something is suspended like a crow. Public, when this JCB was bringing this artists like this onto the main street, everyone thought that it's really a scarecrow. But only when they observed the fingers, that's why they realized they were like worried that there's a real person inside. And for this, we didn't have permission. When we would never get permission also to do it. Because even I remember that when I was clicking the shot or I was around, that even to bring him down, it was very scary because he didn't want that pot to break, that mud pot to be break. It has to be like retained. So more sandworks. So somebody made like a sandals. Yeah, I think it's Naveen and others that when you walk on the sand, you are making homes. Like you can see the detail of that thing. So there's some kind of a mold which is like placed onto your chappal or shoes. That when you're walking, you're making homes, like a shape of homes on the sand. Yeah, something like this. So this is another artist, Prasad. So everyone stood at the different mounds of the sand, and they were passing on this yellow ribbon ball to each other, and it was like forming like an amazing network, like connecting from person to person and things like that. So it was like very playful, but as they were throwing this ball to each person, and it was forming an interesting pattern on the top of the sand. So this sand depot, in a way, sand depot really looks like as if like we have a desert in the city. Yeah, this is how it looks on the large scale. This is another work by same artist Ranjana, who did the hopscotch and the bird. So there was this water tank built for the construction site. So it was like middle of the summer, and she wanted to be a mermaid, a golden fish or something like that. So we had to hire water, and we filled the water to the steel tank, and literally she was swimming in that water at a construction site, like a little golden fish. So now we come to the site where I told about this ice blocks. So this ice blocks were kind of made per order, that they would get edible colors in it. So in case even if this kids around wants to, like, by chance if they are eating it or something, that it would not be dangerous for them. So we got it very edible grade ice, and also with edible colors in it. So we try to create a slide there where kids could come down on the ice block sliding.
That looks like a lot of fun.
Then there's another same artist Raghu Adair who did that rowing thing on the lake, on the river. So he wrapped this reflective sticker onto his body, and he was walking in middle of this traffic place, the signal.
Like the road sign of the pedestrian
Yeah.
walk. Yeah.
So same artist, you can see in that middle of the road, there's a bullock cart if you can spot. And that bullock cart usually are not allowed in this one of those important streets of Bangalore. They're only allowed in Market and the JC Road and things like that. But he had this bullock cart to do his intervention in the street. And you could see this, he's sitting on the bullock cart with a commode placed, and he's sitting on that commode with a laptop and a headphones, and with the shorts bermudas, looking like as if like he's working from Bulacat or something like that, and like a techie IT typical IT employee or something like that.
Given the current context of working from
Yeah.
home, Suresh, this is 7 years
Working from
ago. So
toilet.
apt. Yeah.
I mean, he got a lot of media attention at that time. Next day, because we couldn't follow this performance because it was a very durational performance. We only met him in the end. So he was we had a friend who was documenting this, and we only saw all this documentation next day, and we saw also the press covered him so much. They would stop him and ask, "What are you doing? Why are you doing?" and all those things, because it was such a like a like a very surreal image, for somebody to sit on a bullock cart on a commode, as if the bathroom is kind of fitted into this bullock cart and is taking around in the city. And he dared to, because this is a historic village, the image, because that bullock cart was I mean, we didn't have permission, but it was allowed even in front of Vidhan Sauda. Now our Yash, who turned into like a zebra at the time, and he painted himself like a zebra, and he was there. He was at this junction of City Market and this street, which is crowded street, and he was trying to paint this zebra crossing onto the junctions. It was very I mean, this works actually. We are only seeing this works as the images now, but at that, when I think of this work happening there, it was so much chaos around, because I was literally running from artist to artist. Ranjana had just finished the Regal work, then I had to rush to Yash because he has already started the work, and I was worried about traffic getting like packed, and vehicles not moving, and police, like chasing us and things like that. But it was very interesting that how the local auto drivers and vendors were supporting him to do this work even before we arrived there, because I was very particular about artists starting their work on time and things like that, not to wait for any audience or artists to come and things like that. They have to really stick to the schedule. So I remember that we all reached there, Yash was already in this mode painting it.
Suresh, could I just ask you back at the last image of the bullock cart? How did you source the bullock cart
You can
owner?
hire
How
them
did it?
actually.
You can
You
hire
can hire
them,
them. Yeah, you can
but
hire them.
you had somebody actually
Riding it.
driving it.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
So
They
how
come
did
with
they
it.
feel? Yeah, okay. So how did the driver feel about being asked to go to an illegal space?
He initially told him to take him from City Market to Commercial Street.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a route. But
Yeah.
so passing through Vidhan Sauda also was part of the, like, he was guiding them to go through it. I think Raghu is like a very, is interesting person, that he can handle situations. Even if police stopped and all those things, he would handle it very cleverly. So a lot of artists can't take that risks, but he, and like even I myself, if I am in this out position situations, actually we are in a position, either we'll be denied, that's all, but we were not like on like very adamant about things, and we were not on that ego thing also that it has to be done and things like that, but we would try it, and if something doesn't go around, it's fine. But just this beautiful image happens, like, which is very, very interesting, even for the artist also, and even for the, as an art work also, that fantasy, that such a surreal moments in a city like this.
Yeah, I would have liked to have heard the conversation between the driver and the
Yeah,
artist, because he was saying, well, why are you doing this, and to kind
but
of
all these things
explain
will happen
the
because
art.
he's very articulate, and he also comes from a very interior places in Karnataka, like near Sagara, and I'm seen him that he handles things very well, and he definitely would have convinced, and also he talks well, so he's definitely would have convinced that why he's doing, and what is his purpose. And also the, of course, that Bullockard guy also is like is getting a lot of media attention and all those things, I hope, but I don't know if we had a follow-up of meeting him and things like that, but definitely he was really happy to have this, because his Bullockard was stopped at Commercial Street for the exhibition for some time.
I
Thank
think
you.
it's a very important point that you made, Suresh, about dealing with these situations cleverly and also not having an ego as a performance artist that is engaging with so many different kinds of people in situations that can get sticky. So thank you for making that point.
Yeah.
Yash, do you want to say anything? Or are you just going to keep quiet?
It's Yash in action. Don't be shy, Yash. It's Yash in action.
Well, I really enjoyed that this zebra crossing happened, embodying the signage. Also, Raghu had done his pedestrian walk as a response to this. So, in between the many artists within the collective, it was, I think, really wholesome to see how, we were in conversation through our action, and how we were talking about the city infrastructure and or the lack of, or how we were advocating the basics which we didn't have in our way, or really, like when we were talking about signage earlier, on how in transportation we tend to ignore it in India. We don't look at any road sign. So what do you do then? You know that a few of your friends have been in accidents because they didn't see a road bump, and these things really trigger you to think about it, and like when you place yourself in a city as a performer, as a pedestrian, as I guess as someone who's trying to make a point, so you dress yourself up in a costume and I guess you're just fighting for the basic here.
Yeah, similarly, that U-turn movie happened much more after all our performances and interventions like this, with Badal
Yeah,
also as art director to it.
yeah, and it really inspired a lot of local films,
Yeah,
like Suresh was saying, which was really interesting. Directors and filmmakers took a lot of inspiration for their own work.
yeah. Next.
I think it
I
ends
mean,
here.
when we did this works, as I said, we were really not concerned about who is our audience, and are we reaching out to only art crowd and things like that. But this images online on Facebook and Instagram actually got little viral also at the time. So I used to get calls from people of various disciplines asking permission to use these images for their talks and whatever presentations and all, in when it's about urban urban stories, or something to do with urbanism, or not just in performance context, but they were seeing it in many other perspectives, or many in context also. So these images were actually, the images had their own life with soul, irrespective of artist and who's doing it, who is the curator, etc., etc. The images, they themselves talked a lot about it. Next.
And
Please.
most of the time over here, like if we were dressed in a certain way in a costume for a performance announcing ourselves, it's the audience that facilitated us actually. If we just spoke to them. So even at the zebra performance, it was the fruit seller who was just like, "Oh, you've come here to make an important point." So I didn't have any of our team members, and as we were stretched out in KR market. So like I feel like when you speak the common tongue, or if you can just communicate what you're trying to do, the immediate audience becomes your biggest support team. And they stop the vehicles from going over the painting. And I think, like from my experience, not having the team around was actually working well for me.
Yeah, yeah. But
And I
just
think
that
in a lot of other cases.
no, but most of the time, as I said, even when Sridhar performed under that flyover bridge, hanging himself, like a bird. So most of the times, I ended up only managing traffic around because I didn't want any police attention or anything, you know. So I was very keen. I was very protective of artists also, not to get this thing. So I was very particular that everything goes well, that we don't.
So as in your,
That
oh, sorry, you were saying something.
just a minute. And I'm just waiting for the jet to go away.
There are a lot of students here want to make,
So I want to do a
go on.
yeah. No, I was just saying that most of the time I ended up being like a protector of this artist in public, like not to get like anybody's attention, and because we knew that even within the art circles we were harshly criticized for kind of a work we are doing. So at the same time, we also didn't want to get into some kind of a trouble, so that that such practices also shouldn't become like a nightmares for anybody. So that's why like most of my energy is gone in like that creating such kind of a safe situation for artists also, not only because we know that there's a risk in the ideas conceptual level, and there's a risk because most of us went to art schools, we were doing studio practices, and now today we are doing something like this which is not heard of at the time. Even then when performance artists are performing in the galleries and museums, but we really didn't want to do such practices. We wanted to really leave that potential, or take that potential of body and artist concepts into another level, not really confine again back to like a gallery space or a cube space and things like that.
Suresh, I think the important word you used in your presentation was how the artist inhabited a space. And I think that word inhabit is interesting. And I
Yeah.
think what you're also talking about is repositioning art within society. So actually repositioning art as being a consumable thing. And unfortunately, when you see it in the galleries and the museums, it becomes a consumable thing. But actually, what you're talking about in this inhabiting process is you're repositioning art itself. You're saying that art itself, as Boyce said, that every human activity is art, or as Carl Andre said, art is what artists do. That basically you're repositioning the nature of art in your work, which to me is a really fundamental and important thing to do. And in many of these interventions, this notion that the audience doesn't necessarily have to be there, or the audience is created from the people who become participants through the sympathy of the artist, is really important in terms of this repositioning of the place of art. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree. But another thing for me at the time, since these artists were young artists, nobody knew their names. They were just graduates sometimes, and somebody came from small towns. So for me, it was very important for me that they should have an experience like this. It's not that they're performing there. It's not that they're claiming that they have ideas, they're artists, and they want to perform for larger people or whatever it is. So for me, that at that moment, it was like when I heard their ideas and all, I was feeling that I have to just facilitate their ideas forget about like showcasing them or
Yeah.
setting up a stage for them and things like that. So I was literally humbled to make this
Yeah.
works possible for the artists first.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that was the best part of such curations.
I once wrote in an essay that a curator is someone who empties the toilet for the artist. Anyway.
Almost.
Suresh, let me
So
know.
anything to talk
Yeah,
impact? Yeah.
yeah. So I think everybody's if we can have people turn your videos on for this section, I thought that we could start the conversation with everybody just picking one intervention that you found interesting and saying why. So go ahead, Ritu.
I have a question before we can move to that. So, Suresh, I really enjoyed the presentation that you put up, and even whatever we're doing in our project with Festival of Propositions, I was thinking of something in response to whatever we've been seeing and whatever all the questions that we've been raising. So, I was thinking that when we're sort of doing this performance, which is moving, like the bullock cart thing, or even for that matter, the performance that Yash did. In performances like these, where we're interacting with an audience that we don't know about, much of the performance do you plan, and how much you just do?
See, we literally plan because I'm very particular about time as a concept and the space, and the schedule is done. But we also do, because as I said, that most of these artists were they had jobs to do, and they're not there every day. So we would only meet on weekends and festivals, holidays, so that nobody's everyday routine or their jobs are not disturbed. And so we would visit the same sites again and again to get familiar to the space, because with my experience, as since you all are working as artists, as students now, art students, or with my experience of teaching and also doing such projects, the best works even in such places happened for the artists who had familiarized the space more. They made themselves comfortable more in such situations, and the works, the translation of the work, from an idea to execution. So the best works happen for the artists who spent a lot of time in that situation there. See, a lot of people who really didn't turn up, but they had idea and they only came up at the time of execution. They really they couldn't do it much, because they themselves were feeling alienated with the space. So the more you spend, the more number of times you visited the space for you to get familiar, and that was a comfortable for your body. Because this is performance. This is not like that you put up an artwork there, that you prepare in your studio and just go there and hang it and things like that. Since it is about your body involvement and your mind involvement, we can see when they're performing that how involved they are, how comfortable they are.
And these
Because this is
spaces
not like a
actually,
stage.
and these spaces triggered you to feel something like the first or second time. And if you really
Yeah.
embodied what you were feeling, like Suresh is a practitioner of Vipassana and like understanding what you're feeling and why. For me, feeling anxious because I couldn't walk in city market. I couldn't not close my eyes for a second and look, there's a vehicle over me or there's someone over me. And the lack of having any system, provokes you to adapt to that situation.
Yash, would you like to share how you prepared for your performance? Because as I would really like to know.
Oh, so one night before, I had a friend paint me over a bathing suit, like a scuba diving suit or something. And then I was still like, my face is all covered in the zebra marks, so I couldn't show myself up to anyone. I had to put a helmet on when I got out of my friend's house and got to KR Market, like which was 20 kilometers away. The only friend who willingly participated. He didn't turn up, but so I was alone, and I knew Suresh had given everyone a slot of like half an hour each. Like we started at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock, and we went on till 3. So I had something right at midday or at 1 o'clock, and I was visiting a hardware shop quite frequently in KR Market. So I went to his place and I asked him if I could change in his godown. So he let me. because I got a lot of equipment off of him for my studio practice. I was still in second year of college that time. And he's like, yeah, go. Then he's like, what are you doing? I said, no, it's just part of this art festival that we're part of. And he entertained, he really encouraged. Once I came out as a zebra, he walked with me to the site. Like, I didn't have a site that had in mind. I would just pick any zebra, I mean, any crossing where I felt, okay, this is the right place. So I came across this fruit seller and I spoke to him. He's like, what do you think I'm dressed as? I actually started the conversation with him. He said, some Janwar. I said, which Janwar? And then he's like, he looked me up and down. He was a bit confused because uh, I don't know how close we were to an actual zebra, but like, yeah, but he guessed eventually. And then he felt like he was a custodian of my narration.
Mm.
So he made space. He told everyone to move aside. He asked everyone to make a circle and watch and not to intervene. And I accepted him. He became part of performance in that way, where he would ask the scooter guys or the autos to stop while I was painting it. And then he'd really get mad, if someone came close to me. And at one point where I was putting my hand into this tin container for the paint to come out, enamel paint, so it's metal, I cut my hand. So I was like bleeding through the performance, and then he stopped the performance. He's like, okay, I see you're hurt, and it's not important for you to continue, but please wrap yourself in
Yeah,
this.
I remember that
Yeah,
moment.
yeah, yeah.
I was angry about you also that you were like you looked very possessed. I mean, most of the artists when performing they sound possessed.
And I didn't know what to do, so I saw
Yeah,
Suresh and all come a bit late. They were like 15 minutes late to the party. So I was looking to them for help or to pull him out, but I couldn't. He had to do what he had to do as my custodian. And then he let me continue. Uh,
mm,
and then I had to walk out because I didn't know how to end it. But I was having a constant dialogue with people around me, the autowalas. I had no improvised script or anything. I was just telling them that where do you see zebra crossings, where don't you see? And I was just, trying to make a dialogue. Yeah.
yeah, coming to the same point again. Like if Yash is not familiar with that area, even if something goes wrong, like most of the artists that when they step out of their comfort zones, they are uncomfortable if something which goes against their plan, you know. So if you have spent a lot of time there and if you know that surroundings very well, so thing is that if something doesn't go well with what you have planned, you can still do something improvised, you know. But or you can even you are even cool about that work not happening also, you know, because you have spent such a valuable time there and you experience a lot more than your actual performance is. So you also let go things, you know. That's another thing that we have to understand. Otherwise, if you have not spent time there and you only go with an idea and you want to translate that idea there, and if nothing happens, then you are hurt, and you know, and most of the time you're frustrated about it. but but since this work is more about experiencing it, that several visits and spending so much of such a quality time at the site or the space or with the people makes you makes your understanding of that idea or the concept and intervention much better, that even if something doesn't happen, you're not hurt, you know, or
Yeah.
you're not disappointed. But you as an artist, maybe it's not there for the audience, for us to see as images, but the experience what you have for yourself, because it's a performance and such work is all about experiential work. You experience first and then you make others to experience. So when you experience it so much that you are very cool about it.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the sense of belonging and to the site really becomes a part of your work. Once you really absorb what the space and the people around you are about, and then I think like creatively or as a designer, it really opens up. Like if you were to think of your proposals to a specific place in Bangalore, then you would integrate it a whole lot more better in terms
Hmm.
of designing it for a particular audience or for the resources that are available, you know. And I think like in any creative project, that is a strong component that we often miss. sitting on our screens in times like these?
No, I also like did certain internships and some courses with Srishti students, and most of the majority of the Srishti students don't belong to Bangalore city, for example, you know. So that way, and anyway, all this entire campus is set up in Yalanka, so they have also very little like the knowing the city much lesser than uh, you know uh, comparatively. So but when I most of my work was happening with the students in the city itself, it was difficult for them, because first of all, the city as a city, it's not theirs. As a space wise, it's new to them, so it took a lot of time for them to get familiar. So, and also when I expect them to visit more to Kaban Park and any other sites in the city, it because of commute, from Srishti to say, MG Road or this Kaban Park and things like that. It was even more tougher for the students to come regularly. So in that context, I was telling that the best works are happen when which with students who spend a lot of time comparatively, other than those kids who kind of conceptualized the idea. They made a great presentation about what they want to do and all. They wrote about it. They wrote the context well and all. But when it's about execution, they were not the happy souls.
That's one of the reasons why Art and Transit was really setting up studio spaces within the station, because often as
Yeah, yeah.
designers, we plan for someplace else versus immersing ourselves in that environment. And for other people to also see that process happens in the environment and not just in your head or someplace else. So that's a very important point. So Rishika, you wanted to say something, and other people have turned their cameras on. So let's go ahead and share other interventions that excited you and why.
Yeah, actually, my doubt got clarified after like Suresh spoke, so that's not a doubt anymore. But I really like I found a lot of projects really interesting. Like I really find this kind of performance and the symbolic and representational art like really interesting. Especially, I would say the one with the text that happened outside the textile factory where she wore that dress and then walked around to the mall, and then that started up a conversation of why can't she enter the mall. I thought that that was a really interesting project, and why a certain type of dress, why this, why that, like that was really interesting for me. Another one that really intrigued me was creating like as a child, when we were talking about being around sand and how you would like to be in and around sand, uh, and living childhood memories again. So the bird one and the mermaid one, like that really connected to me, because I always like to like delve into these kind of things. So that was really interesting, and I would like to do something like that someday.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, sure, you can do. Just that you need your friends around, and yeah, some camera, one or two cameras, that's enough.
Other folks. Thank you, Rishika.
I really like the Ranjana's performance with the dressing up like an eagle on the flyover. And I was just thinking about it like the other day I was talking to my mother and we were like, why are we humans? Like, what if I wanted to be a bird, just sit on a tree and like scream all day, just like ha. And I was just thinking, like, what if Ranjana actually did that and we could have been like that? And I don't know, I just found it really fascinating. So that was really nice.
So talking about the same project, I really find the fact fascinating that it was the reaction from the audience was actually not like you didn't expect anything from the audience, and cars were just passing by and they just saw you and they didn't even know why you were doing it. And I don't know, I feel that space is very interesting, and yeah.
One of those guys, I remember literally chasing him because he was on this moped like TVS, and he stopped and he wanted to record from his mobile also. And that is when I was literally chasing them, because there's no space there, it's a flyover,
Yeah.
and I'm worried of like somebody hitting him and things like that. So I literally have to do that role also, literally chase them, don't see the folk, go ahead, things
So
like that.
it's like the opposite of what you usually want when a performance is
Yeah,
happening. Yeah.
yes. To keep the audience in the dark, and then we take all the light. So because, yeah, as I said, the artist has to experience it, and at the same time, yes, if somebody sees, because we know that this digital times, this images can circulate fast, and somebody can see it and
Yash, do you know the name of the artist with the wings? I think that Priyal had mentioned her.
I think
Ranjana, as
it's Ranjana.
mentioned.
Yeah.
Would somebody
Suresh?
type that into the chat, please? It's just the full name with the
Yeah,
surname as
as
well.
soon as Suresh or Yash
Yeah,
come back
thank you.
in. But let's keep going. Let's keep our conversation going as they come back in. What were some of the other projects that you found really interesting?
Actually, to add to what Priya said, I just thought like it would be really interesting if we did like a sort of a performance sitting or standing a little away from each other, trying to communicate like birds communicate, and like either singing to each other and like at a distance, like something like that, and talking about that.
Other folks. I found the kind of the beach umbrella with the chairs on the sand on top of the truck, a really interesting image, and the idea of this kind of sudden place recognition of a beach on top of a truck, uh, and that juxtaposition of that was very strong image, as was the sitting on the trash and in as a canoe, again very strong image.
That was actually Rishivabhati, Bangalore's one of Bangalore's founding rivers at Nandhalli Cross, where the metro station is the Mysore Road metro station.
Yash, can you put, do you know the artist Ranjana who had
Yeah,
done,
yeah.
yeah, can you put her full name in? Rob wants to know.
Ranjana N. Let me just look it up on Facebook.
Other
Um,
folks, go ahead and share. Go ahead, Denise. You're on mute.
Mute.
I really like the river one as well. And I like the contrast, the stark contrast between his surroundings and the costume that he wore. And even the boats, the paper boats on his head, you immediately make that connection between like a childhood memory of making a paper boat and putting it down a little puddle or a stream during the monsoon season.
And that was part of his performance where he's taking the boats off his costume and putting it into the river. Yeah. Lots of great archive Suresh has. So if anyone wants to work with video content uh, from all of Suresh's projects, he's sitting on Bangalore's oldest archives in art, I guess, well archived projects.
Other folks, even if you have your video off, go ahead and jump into the conversation. Which were some of the interesting projects for you and why?
Um,
The one where the man was walking on the road with covered in the street light, covered in the red street light. It really looked like he was on fire when he was walking, and the only thing I could think about is man on fire while he's walking. But then Suresh said that he's covered in traffic lights, and I was like, okay, he's not on fire.
Suresh is connecting. All right, Suresh. I wanted to ask him. Suresh, are you on? Can't hear you. Your mic is off.
Hello.
Hi, hi, hi.
Sorry,
Is it
my phone died.
is it possible for us to use some of these images on our social media for the future of transportation, just to provoke a conversation? And
Sure, definitely. We can, but we just that we have to also mention the artist. Maybe we take a kind of oral permission from artist.
yeah,
If it's Raghu's, if it's Ranjana's.
we've used the Zebra one and credited Loopholes, courtesy of the VC and the social media team and the facilitation team.
Okay, sure. I mean, we just have to put a word to the artist. That's all.
And Yash, maybe like the way that you had, the conceptualization for the mural, that the artist themselves wrote a little blurb about it. Perhaps here
Yeah,
also we could ask the artist to write a blurb on the intention. Then that would even make it better.
definitely.
I mean, it might be difficult to expect that from artists because they might be, if at all somebody can do it, it's fine. But most of them may be difficult to expect.
We can definitely
Because
get
they
on
are
a
all are
call
back.
and
Most of them are in their hometowns.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you can call and get it
yeah,
over,
it's easier to get them to
spoken
talk.
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
than
and yes, you could do that. Just
Yes,
get them
yeah,
to
yeah,
talk
yeah.
on the
yes,
phone and then and do it.
yeah.
Okay, so let's take a few more. Go ahead, Ritu.
I was actually asking that when like all the artists made proposals for what they wanted to do, what did those proposals look like? Because in performances like these, you have a concept, but a lot of it is about just going into the space and it's sort of unpredictable. So when you're proposing these to someone, what is it that you actually tell them? How do you like present the proposal?
See, as I said, the I mean, because Yash is here, it's interesting that because we had at the time, I think we were not familiar, not using WhatsApp yet or something like that, but we were using this Facebook Messenger. Since our meetings were mostly at the sites, and so uh, we had a non-stop messaging in the Facebook group and the chat, and we were constant. And some people, as I said, they were also had difficulties to text me back and things like that, in the group. So they would call me back and say, "This is my idea," explain in Kannada and things like that, and I tried to really understand. Then I would also propose that in the group, and so most of the time, this artist would propose the sites for the group that they have an idea like this, and sometimes maybe it's other artists who would do better work of that site than the artists who had proposed it itself. So it was much more like that anybody could enter. It's like open invitation to anybody. So as I said, one of those that sand site artist, he never made it to also. He couldn't come from Ballari at all. But you saw that such a memorable works happened with other artists. So this was really like in a collective spirit, not only in terms of execution but also in terms of planning. So during our documentation exhibition at Maxwell Bhavan, I think Yash really literally embarrassed me by printing out the entire conversation of ours on the WhatsApp, sorry, on the Messenger group, and that was really like a thick book like this. I think he still has that book.
Yeah, that's part
So
of
he
the
said
archive.
yeah. So he even said the number of words that I've typed, and it was really even more embarrassing for me to that he even counted those words for me, that how much I've spoken in the group. So it was a constant interaction over the period. And now Arzu as a witness and Yash as a witness, he's also they're part of the Sarja Prakaris group. So they might be wondering that that how much we text regularly, because for me, I'm not only here to sell the produce, but at the same time we are archiving the recipes, for example. So the people who are buying this, ladies who are buying the greens, if they are not familiar with it, we send them the recipes on WhatsApp. And there are a lot of people from other cultures, like like different regions, they also share how this curry is made of this particular traditional greens. So there is a lot of interaction happening within this WhatsApp group now of Sarjapura curries. So similarly, even at the time when I worked, I think I can recollect that this is how this very intense it was. It's not like good morning, good evening WhatsApp groups, for example, but it was really like an archive for me. So when even now, as I speak, there's a discussion happening about how to use Ane Sopu and how to use pumpkin shoots. You know, so I also literally now copy those conversations or copy those recipes and save it as an archive. So similarly, it was happening even then at the time also, because we knew that we were going to set up this exhibition, and this all these things are material for an exhibition.
On
And
the
we
but
also have a small book of it.
I have a question for Suresh. At what point does art stop being art? I mean, if you were to suddenly decide to become a farmer, would that still be art, or
Yes.
would you?
I have nothing like people ask me why did you shift? How did you shift? Actually, inside me, it's very organic. But the speed, I mean, in terms of the calculating an energy and mobilizing the resources might sound very drastic, but as a person, as a planning, and as a conceptualizing it, for me, it's very organic for me. So I didn't shift at
Yeah,
all,
yeah.
because the audience
I'm.
might be shifting, because now I'm
Mhm,
focusing on a
mhm,
region here. So audience might
mhm,
be,
mhm,
and means might be like today it would be greens and it could be vegetables, but just before some time it was painting and sculpture.
mhm. I'm thinking actually of the work of Vivek Vilasini, who has created this food forest over in Kerala, which I visited.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing I think about his project, he's been getting food that grows from all over the world, and planting it on a piece of land which he's bought, and that project has become less like an art project and more like a project for survival, if things totally break down. So I'm just interested in that movement towards away from a kind of objectification of something as art and more towards like real everyday survival. Just
Here,
thinking.
because I'm really on a archive mode since last 2 years. Because when I think of even my own terrace garden, actually I've consumed the produce less, but saved seeds more, even in my terrace garden. Initially, I wanted to grow for myself, but I ended up saving seeds more in my terrace than eating them. So I really felt that, because there's something that I have to really think about it, because I I'm an activist in one sense, but now if I'm doing gardening, that doesn't stop me from activism. I talk about lakes here. I get into trouble with neighbors because they're cutting or they're harming the soil or something. They're spraying something. So that for me, that what I did for Venkatappa Art Gallery is what I'm doing for the common spaces in the village here. So that Venkatappa Art Gallery was a common space for artists and other people, but your lake and this water bodies around is a common space for the farmers and gardeners around. So for me, I really don't see so that trouble. It's not safe, though. Since I'm not only growing what to sell or something, I'm also conserving something. So I'm also telling farmers not to spray herbicides, roundups and all those things, how dangerous they are. And because every day I have this conversation, whoever visits, so it's an open guard farm. We are not fenced it really like the way, and we don't have to protect our produce. So a lot of people, villagers, and also the people from the gated communities visit and take seeds, and the saplings and seeds are free. Only the produce is sold here. So I've still stuck to the same concept. So they can take seeds and saplings for free to grow, but only they are charging only for the produce, because the labor, and I have to also support the gardener. I have to pay him the salary. So because his wife lost a job because of the corona situation, so I'm hiring him full time. So this most of the money we are generating is going for the salaries of the people who are helping us. So I want to see the Sarjapur curries because last year I got a grant from BSF, and this year I couldn't get any grants. So I want to see this Sarjapur curries living nursery can sustain on itself. So that's why I'm selling the produce a little bit.
Rob, we can't hear
Rob, we
you.
can't hear you.
So that's very interesting. So indeed, there's an unclear margin that it's not an artist growing food. It's actually also a real life situation. Yeah.
I think that also, the way that both Yash introduced Suresh and the way that Suresh is all within the community in Bangalore is the nature of a facilitator. And, when Rob, you're talking about curation, Suresh, you're talking about curation. That's a huge role that is being played in also, connecting artists and non-artists in the nature of the facilitation. And you really do that. That's very much a part of your practice. It comes across strongly, Suresh.
Yeah.
All right. So
and every time, like even within the art context.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one point. Like when within the art context, when we were doing this Venkatappa Art Gallery, when we did those 6 shows, definitely the audience was really, though it is art, it's not the audience which we saw in the galleries. Though they came in name of art, but it's a different, I don't want to say class, but it's a different audience basically. So we had to think about art, our kind of themes, what we want to show there, and for them to connect to. So similarly, when artists did something in public, they always think about who are the audience around, and how does this such work can connect to those people. So we also do this we adopt ourselves also. Similarly for me now, since it's a different audience, I want to make a connection with the villagers and also with the communities around. The communities who are moved in, migrant, in the gated communities and apartments around. So I think the food is a common theme now, which is binding them all. That's it.
Thank you. So are there any other questions for Suresh? Otherwise, we'll wrap up our session.
I just wanted to add on to Ritu's question about how these proposals were selected. Like Suresh said, like on the messenger group, we would discuss a lot, but then eventually, like a day or two before we had a final meeting, he would just hand over the ATM card from the grant that we got for the bank account, and vaguely asking us, how much you're going to spend, but like fully trusting that okay, we've got it through and we've got like a approximation for how much the paint would cost or whatever, but like never a formal message. And I think like for a lot of the young inexperienced ones, that was really good encouragement in the way that like the trust that came in. And I think having that push also, to think about what you're going to get, but also at the same time just getting the ATM card in your hand, and it's like getting money from your parents, right? So you're then like, yeah, you can do what you want.
That's true.
Okay, thank you, Suresh. Just one point to raise. Some people here are thinking about performance, so you've got a lot of food for thought. Some of you were thinking very much in the fantasy space. I also think, again, a lot of food for thought. Some of you have been looking at problem spaces and how to make invisible visible. So I hope that, again, this is a lot of food for thought for you. And we've had a lot of examples of artists, although a lot of people on the group identify as designers. So that's something that I do want to point out, because I think that there is an interesting dynamic of how people work and also what each does. What do the arts do? What does design do? So just consider that and keep that in your head as you may bring up questions or thoughts, even if you just have reflections on this idea of approaching this whole future of transportation from the view of an artist or a designer, or how you yourself identify, or how you yourself might feel like you're crossing over, or you may not even be conscious of that. So just keep that in your head as a certain awareness to think about. It would be great to have a conversation perhaps next Friday as we do our reflection of these 3 weeks, because so much of the influence has come from artists. Many of the people in this group identify as designers, and then we've also had people like that see themselves as activists who are part of the group. So where are all these lines blurring, or where are they distinct? These are some interesting questions and thoughts that are coming up for me.
Yes, Suresh, I just wanted to say thank you really very much. That was an incredibly interesting talk. I've taken a few screenshots of the whole screen, including our pictures. Is it okay if I post a couple of those on the Future of Transportation Facebook group? Yeah,
Yes, please.
great.
Yes, please.
So it's basically the image you show, but plus all our reactions. Is that okay with everybody else?
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. That was really great, Suresh. It was so nice to catch up with your work since we last
nice
met.
to know you. Nice to see you again for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Suresh. Really, thanks so much for sharing.
Welcome all.
Yeah.
So looking forward to see you all sometime in real space and real time.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
All right. So just for everybody else, thank you, Suresh. We're just going to have a small wrap up.
Okay.
Okay.
So I can leave the group.
Yes.
Thank you, Suri. See you
Thank you.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. Thank you, Yash.